for Tableau PublicTUG, everyone. We are here to answer the questions, why did you do that? How did you do that? And the most important question of all, how did you make it look so good? Today, our hosts are Priyanka Dobal and Ant Pulley. Both are Tableau Public Ambassadors. Check out their profiles for some inspiration. And myself, I'm Eric Howard, a Users Group Ambassador. Here with us today are Shreya Arya to tell us about her 5-time Viz of the Day Tableau Public journey, and our very own Preethi Lodha. She will show us her award-winning American International Students Viz. And Varun Jain will present his Viz of the Day, Rediscovering the Love for Books. We'll start off with Shreya, then move to Preethi and Varun, and we'll finish with a swag drawing, so stick around. And if there's time, we'll have some Tableau news. All in all, we should wrap it up in about 90 minutes. All right, Shreya is a Tableau Alteryx consultant at the Information Lab in the UK and a member of the Data School. She enjoys exploring fun data sets and blending her creativity and storytelling with her data visualization designs on Tableau Public. She loves sharing her designs and ideas with the Data Fam community. She has numerous Tableau accomplishments. In only 2 years, she has become a 5-time Viz of the Day winner, a Tableau Public featured author, a Tableau Next nominee, that's Adam Miko's list of the next generation Tableau stars in the Data Fam community. And last month, she presented at the London TUG on using color to elevate your data visualization designs. All right, let me stop sharing and say welcome, Shreya. Do you have a personal fun fact you can share with us?
That's a great question. Personal fun facts. Outside of data visualization, I love being creative in other ways as well. For example, jewelry making, working with clay, watercoloring, crochet, playing music. So I love doing a bit of everything, and I like being able to translate that into data visualization as well.
I'll bet it all combines with it well. So how did you start using Tableau Public or Tableau?
That's a great question. So I initially came across Tableau and Tableau Public while applying for the data school. So I applied to the data school in October 2022. And before this, I was studying chemistry at university, which is something I really loved doing, you know, being able to collect data in the lab, analyzing it, forming conclusions, and hopefully making an impact in that way. So because I enjoyed the data aspect of my degree so much, I decided to go into more of a data-orientated role. And that's where I came across the data school. And the application process for the data school was very hands-on. They basically asked us to download Tableau and create a visualization about anything we're passionate about. So drawing from my chemistry background, I decided to create a visualization on microplastics. And I really loved how interactive Tableau was and how easy it was to pull insights from the data. So that kind of carried on later after the data school.
So was that microplastics viz part of a Tableau community project, or did you come up with that on your own?
By myself. So I sourced it using like government data. So it was about microplastics in the River Thames Basin in the UK. And since it was a topic I was really familiar with and passionate about, I thought it'd be a great first application for the data school.
Nice. So when was your first Viz of the Day and how did you find out about it?
Day happened last year in February, so around this time of the year. And it was about African American music in the US. So it was part of the community project Back to Biz Basics. And I remember when I found out, it was such a surreal experience because I remember my phone kind of blowing up with notifications with everyone congratulating me. And Tableau Public actually tagged me in their tweet. And it was so surreal, absolutely amazing to experience that.
Something wonderful to wake up to. Well, as a parent, you never really have a favorite child, but which is your favorite visit of the day since you have five?
That's actually a really good question. I feel like a lot of my visualizations are quite varied. Um, I kind of like giving them their own individualistic style. Um, but my favorite of the day would probably be my Back to Biz Basics Google Analytics dashboard. Just because when I created this dashboard, this was before I joined the data school. And I remember the idea of creating a business style dashboard at this point was really intimidating to me because I didn't have any business experience at all. So the fact that people actually really liked that viz and it became viz of the day was incredible.
Nice. Well, do you have a favorite Tableau project you've worked on?
Oh, my favorite Tableau projects. Um, I think dashboards in general, I always have I always find them quite fun to do. I think my favorite Tableau project at the moment would probably be my Twitter analytics dashboard, just because I try to incorporate a lot of interactivity and features into it, and at the same point trying to be creative with certain elements of the dashboard. So
Okay.
I thought that was quite a fun project.
Have you found any of the community projects to help you on your journey?
I think all of the community projects help you in your journey in a different way. For example, Activist Basics is great for kind of building that foundation when starting out with data viz, and I think that's absolutely essential to growing your skills. With Makeover Mondays, you get to be a bit more creative. You start to have more responsibility on yourself to decide on the correct chart types, the correct design schemes. So Makeover Mondays are really helpful as well. Workout Wednesdays, they help you grow your Tableau skills so quickly. I feel like there's a really nice synergy between all of the community projects. So instead of focusing on just one at a time, I really encourage people to kind of mix and match and kind of grow or participate in those community projects at the same time to kind of grow your skills.
Okay,
You'll be more well-rounded overall.
that sounds good. Uh, so which do you enjoy more, creating vizzes for Tableau Public or blogging about Tableau Public on your Data Viz Fairy blog?
Oh, I definitely love both. Blogging is really rewarding just because I remember what it felt like starting out with Tableau and being a bit lost. So it's nice to be able to kind of guide people through blogs if possible and kind of help them grow on their journeys. On the other hand, creating visualizations is just so fun because sometimes you have really cool ideas in your mind, and it's really nice to be able to kind of like push them out and translate them into a visualization. So I know there's been so many times where like it's been like late at night and I know I should be sleeping, but I just have an idea pop into my mind and I know I can't go to bed until I kind of draw it out or kind of like plan something out.
Yep.
So maybe creating visualizations ever so slightly more.
All right. I understand that. So what is your favorite Tableau resource? Your favorite learning resource?
Yeah, so I actually have a blog on a bunch of great Tableau resources to get started with your journey. And in that blog, I kind of mention Andy Kriebel's name quite a lot, just because he has so many great videos on his YouTube channel on kind of the basics of Tableau. And I think that it's so important that you kind of build on those essentials. And his videos are always really easy to follow. I remember when I was learning Tableau, I was basically binge watching all of his videos. And that's how I really grew my skills. So huge kudos to Andy.
Yeah, I've been there. So what is a current feature in Tableau that you want to learn more about?
There are so many great features in Tableau. I think one feature I'm particularly interested in is dynamic zone visibility, just because there's so many ways you can incorporate it into your visualizations. I feel like I've barely just touched the tip of it. So I'm excited to try and explore more use cases of dynamic zone visibility in my future business.
Yeah. I forgot about 3 or 4 different ways I'm using it in my new business dashboard. So it's very versatile. Well,
It's such
thank
a
you
handy
for your
feature.
time today. Can't
Thank you for
wait
having me.
back for our. I'm sure we'll have you for a visit of the day very soon. Uh, I'm sure you have many, many more. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right,
Yeah, thank you
Ant,
so much.
and you've been working with Ant, right? So you want to turn it over to him?
Yeah, Ant, take it away.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Shreya. Yes, and yes, we have been working together for the last few months, so that's been really good as well. So yes, pleasure. Oh, have I put my camera on? Yes, I have. Pleasure to introduce Preethi next. So as you know, she's one of the leaders of this tug that we're on at the moment. But we're getting her in to talk through one of her visits. So give her a bit of a talk through of her background. As you can see, she's data analytics and insight manager within higher education. A slight hint to what the visit is about. Tableau Public Ambassador, same years as me, 22 and 23. She co-leads Data FamCon, which is a great community initiative. I've participated a few times in that. It's a really good one to look at. As I mentioned, co-lead for this particular tug. She's been featured author for a couple of years as well, and has 3 Tableau Public Visitor Days, as we're about to see one of them. A very impressive stat, over 1 million views on just one visualization. That's pretty impressive going. I have to get some tips onto that one. And she's the Women in Analytics 22 Data Connect Conference winner with the Sherlock Holmes Viz, and a Chart Champ 2023 winner on the Viz we're about to see today. And a fun fact, speaks and writes in 3 languages, another impressive one. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you to talk through your America's International Students Viz.
Thank you, Ant. Yeah, I would also love to hear how many different languages everybody speaks who has joined us, because yeah, I speak 3 languages and write 3 languages, but in my head, I feel like I can understand more than 3 languages because of the dialects and the things in India. So let me know. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Anne, for such a great introduction. I'm Preethi Lodha, and I'm going to walk you through this award-winning visualization of the day that I built 100% in Tableau. So what does this consist of? Let me move you on to this next slide. This was one story that was created of 8 dashboards, and we counted. There are 11 distinct charts that were used to make the story flow through. Before I go into the weeds of this project, I would like to share with you the actual dashboard to give you an insight of what it looks like. So I am currently in this viz, you can see, utilizing the Tableau dashboard's story structure. I have set it up in such a way that you have the key information on the top, and it's going to move your story through. I will walk you through how I came with the design aspects of it and rest of the stuff. But towards this dashboard, this is going to walk you through about the international education space of America and why there is a need of creating that space with the decline in the domestic birth rates that is happening all over the world. There is a need and there is a space for a lot of international students to come. So I would ask you, I'm not going to walk you through the entire dashboard, but I will walk you through the quick thing. You will see a quick snippet up top here, and then you have the viz that details the information. So this viz gives you why the students come to America to get their higher education, because 34 of the top 100 globally ranked institutions are in US. So the education space, at least the higher education space in America, is really good. And the next one says California, New York, and Massachusetts are the 3 leading states. Hint, hint, there are a lot of institutions up here. Especially I'm in Massachusetts, and the place I work in, if I throw a stone, I'm gonna hit at least 1 student off of the 34th floor that I am on. So yeah, walk through this dashboard at your leisurely pace, but let's come back to the main event, which is the presentation, right? So how is this presentation gonna work? I'm gonna walk you through the stages of my process that helped me in building this visualization. I'm gonna give you a design checklist that helped me build this visualization, give you an insight into what I learned, because every time I build something, I learn something new. So I put it in, it adds to my design checklist, or it adds to my knowledge of building better visualization. And then we will wrap up with a good cold summary. Okay, the first step, the design process. Why did I build this visualization? There was a challenge that came out that had been set up. So this challenge had set of rules that I had to follow. Based on that, my first step that I always take is to define the purpose and the audience. This sort of helps me in understanding what my story is going to be about, what I want to build. And I take that understanding and go for the data exploration part. I look for what are the different data sets that are available. And it was really helpful that I worked in the higher education space. So I already knew what are the different data sources that I'm going to get. But it might not be the case every time. So you have to go out for the data exploration part, understanding what you're trying to say, so that you put out the data as it is and you do not sway based upon the perception of others. Because there's a saying, if you beat the data long enough, it will confess to anything. You don't want to do that. You want to present the facts. And you see between the data preparation and exploration and the design and implementation part, it is a circle, because I gathered the data, I design it, and if I feel like there's more to the story that needs to be added, I come back to the previous phase. So it goes in a circular fashion. Okay, so the first step, right? The Chart Champ competition came out. They said this year's theme is higher education. What swayed my design was the percentage of weightage that they gave. They said design is 25%, functionality is 25%, and storytelling and usability is 50%. So the 50%, the higher weightage was given to how the story goes and how the users can dive into the data. As you see, I've had a tweet up there that said that there were 60 Tableau dashboard entries, and trust me, it was the top 5 were the really good ones. So I will ask you to go and explore, if you are in the higher education space, the business that were created. So coming up to my second step is to defining the purpose and the audience of it. I would say that identify these 4 questions for every biz you want to build. Get an understanding of your audiences for this particular story, because this was a competition and I knew this is not just for higher education space. I wanted everybody, irrespective of a background in higher education, to understand the story. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that there is a demographic decline in US. The domestic education enrollments will see a lag. So there is an opportunity for the international student space to grow. And a personal tidbit, I came to America as an international student. So this was my homage to my experience and to the rest of the international students who are. Raise your hand virtually if you have worked with an international student or your current colleague was an international student. And yeah, let me know. There, I see your hand raised, Eric. There you go. And what are the answers that I'm trying to find? This was going to be a comprehensive narrative. This was not going to be a detailed analysis. This was for the higher level audience, which gives you a quick insight into the status of the international students and the impacts of it. And finally, the question that is important to ask yourself and off of your audience is what questions it's going to inspire, or what are the conversations that are going to get. And trust me, once I presented this visualization, I did get next set of questions. It was an interesting chat afterwards. So do pay attention to this step before we go to the next step. So coming to the data preparation and exploration part of it, as I said, there were 8 dashboards. So I decided to break it over. I'm gonna move you to my Excel spreadsheet where I collected all this data. So depending upon the breakdown of the data needs, I knew the sources to go. So people who are in higher education know there are IPEDS data sets. They are Open Doors, does the huge international data sets. So those were the places where I went and I looked for my data. But you will also see once I collected the data, I used a quick cheat metric. I did see a question pop up, how long it took you to build this. It took me a weekend because I was under time crunch. I had to submit for the deadline. So I created it over a weekend. That's why I had to use all the cheat codes that I could to get it there. Could I have made a calculation for XY coordinates in Tableau? 100%. We have done that. But because I was under time crunch, I created it at the back end of the data. So you might see this quick thing happening a lot. So I went ahead and started gathering data for each of the story points that I wanted to tell. Some story points were straightforward, some of them were not. So I needed to do a lot of data densification and a lot of data modeling, which I'll walk you through in a minute. So that needed the data to be changed accordingly. Okay, so that was my data preparation and exploration part.
Hi, Preethi. Sorry, just to interrupt quickly. Are you able
Yes.
to hide that message at the bottom? So where it says user groups, sharing your screen, it's just had a request to hide it if
cool.
possible. Ah, that's cool. All gone.
It's hidden? Okay, cool.
Perfect, thank you.
Sounds good. Yeah. So now come to the design and implementation part of it, right? The key aspect of the design of this one was to make sure that the story that I am telling it sits well. So over here, I'm going to take this particular chart. So you're going to see this hex map, not a hex map. It's a circular sort of a map. So first design choice, if you look at this, I have clear KPIs. So I have set the story already in my title that I'm going to show you that California, New York, and Massachusetts are the top 3 leading states. Now I want you, when you read that and when you look at the visualization, you should be able to interact and know it right away. So the design tips that I'm using here is using the color and the size to make it interact, make it pop. Could I have had used a regular map? Yes, but my message would get lost because of the sizing of the places. So these are the small tidbits, design things that you would learn over a period of which chart to choose. Choosing the right chart type will help you tell the story. So I have my big KPI and the information. And as you could see in the entire viz, I use very few colors. So red is my color, which is going to pop and catch your eye right away, and rest of the stuff. There's one chart which has multiple colors, but that is the way of saying I want to convey my message with red being the dominant color. So as soon as you see the red is the dominant color, but also the size of it. So, and that is the thing. And text plays such an important role in what you are trying to say. If you don't have text hierarchy, if I had everything in the same text size, your eye would not know where to go. So those were the design implementation things that I took into consideration. I have this viz downloadable. So if you want to go back and have a look into all the different practices that I have made or the choices that I have made, please feel free to. What's next? Okay.
While you're switching, there's a question about why did you choose red?
Great question. Because I got inspired by one of the data vizes that I'll show you shortly. that sort of became an inspiration for me to use the color scheme. And having chose the red and the black background because it was popping my information, then I went ahead to make it minimal and keep it red. So yeah, it was an inspiration from one of the projects that I love from the data fam community.
Thank you.
So here comes the design checklist. Again, this is my personal design checklist that helps me. It could be different for you. I would love to hear what are your design checklists that you follow, or if there is something that you have learned that helps you, please feel free to put it in the chat. But as I said, choosing the right charts and graphs is really helpful. So you knowing when to use an actual map and when to use a hex map, and when a message could be conveyed by a simple bar chart, and when do you need something extraordinary to showcase the depth of the visualization. And using a pattern for the layout. So if you look at my viz, there is a set pattern, right? You have this space that I have created in which you will get a big KPI and then the information. And I am not all over the place. It is set in a way that it catches your attention right away. Then coming to the clear color cues. And as I said, yes, I wanted to keep it a minimal color structure so your eyes do not strain and it is easy to understand and to look it up. Yeah, so those were the design checklists that I followed. Coming to the next part, where I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step of one data viz that I was inspired by. How did I create? I followed these 3 steps that I'm going to walk you through in detail. I utilized the data fam resources. I have this habit of continuous learning through feedback. And shout out to my homie, Candace Carragher. She is one of my colleagues and friends. She is not from the data space. She's supporting me today. She is one of my guinea pigs for all the visualizations I create, and I show her and I'm like, give me a feedback from the layman's term. Because we in the data world are surrounded by data analysts sometimes, and we forget the perspective of the people who probably don't understand this world and the visualization sparing, right? And amplifying your impact through social sharing. Why it is important that once you create these vizes, that you share them in the social setting. Oh, there you go. Here comes the thing. So this was one of the unique charts. Rest of them were pretty straightforward. You had bar charts, you had the hex maps, you had the trellis chart. They're pretty easy to set up. But I came at this situation where I had the data and I knew what data viz I wanted to create, but I didn't know the in between of how the process. And Ludwig was one of the people who had created, I got inspired by, and he said, it's all about polygons. Learn about polygons. I am not a math grad like Varun is. So my math is probably not my strong suite. So I used another data fam resource. What data fam resource did I use? I saw the Zach Bowder's Friend Zone. So this was the viz that I got inspired by. I loved his black background and the red popping off of it and the white structure. So this is where I got my color cues from. I got that inspiration. And then I went to this Steam graph. And a tutorial and the inspiration resulted in the viz that I created. But even before I go there, after I found my inspiration, I didn't know what the chart was called. So what did I do? I took my inspiration and I went to Kevin's chart catalog. So I scrolled through the list of charts, and where did I find it? I found the graph. I was like, oh, there you go. It's called Stream Graph. So I utilize this as a resource. Sometimes I don't even know what the chart's name is. So this acts as a resource for me to go and find what the chart type is and to find an example of how it is created. By doing a little bit of research, I found this great blog by Ludwig, which took you through the journey of step by step of how to create a steam graph, right? So he set me up of how the data needs to be set up. And I went ahead and I set my data up in a way that it sits well with it. So you have your data and you have your model, and the math was pre-calculated, which was easier for me. So I plugged in my data points in there. And now taking his example and having cleaned up my data and made it so that it fits well, I plugged in my data. Oh, it didn't work for the first time, so I had to do a little bit more of cleaning. And then once I did, luckily I didn't have to do all the math of it because it was already done, but feel free to go and understand the math behind it. And I had the basic setup of how this biz could be created. And I went ahead and did all the necessary design changes and the data changes that I needed to clean it up a little bit. And then I got my final product of the visualization that I have shown you on screen. So there you go. The data model has been set up. Then these are the resources that I used, and then I created my visualization out of it. So as I was saying is, you need to get feedback on the stuff that you create. And Viz Office Hours, which is run by Michelle Freeman, Nicole, and Zach, this has been a constant resource for me where I take my creation and go and share it with them and get a feedback. And they are the best place to go because they give you a helpful feedback. If you have any ideas you want to brainstorm, it is really helpful to brainstorm with them. So as you see, Michelle had tweeted out on September 20th that they were holding this office hours on 22nd. And just so you know, the deadline for the submission was 22nd, so I was under a time crunch. I went ahead and participated on that. And they gave me such amazing feedback. There were a few color changes that we made, a few chart types that we adjusted, and the story flowed. And yeah, the next tweet is I thanked them out there, letting them know that their feedback was valuable to me. And one last step that I would say that you take when you create your quizzes is to share them on the social media platform. A, yeah, it is a good way of showcasing your work, but B, it is also a way of adding to people's repository of what could be done and what could be created. Had not Zach Bowder shared his friend zone's visualization on one of my feeds, I would not have come across this beautiful way of looking, the color scheme and the charts and all that stuff. So make sure that you share your creations on all the social media platforms. Finally, I would summarize this whole entire experience as build your own data visualization process. There is no set rules for this. Make your own data visualization process that works for you. Create your own design checklist, because my design is checklist is based on what works for me, what I understand, and how I perceive things. It might not be the standardized checklist. You might have things to add to it, you might have things to subtract from it. And never shy away from learning these visualizations from other techniques. You don't have to be the master, especially for the newbies out there. I used to get scared when I used to see these impressive charts and not know all the math behind it. So feel free to deconstruct and analyze the techniques that have been used and practice them. just don't copy them over, practice them so that the next time you create a viz, now you know what are the steps that you have to take. And also tap into data farm resources. We have such a vast repository of resources, especially tugs like these, where people come and share their way of creations and stuff. I've been inspired so much. I've been inspired by Victor last time, the way he presented his analysis. It gave me ideas of how better I could present. So it's not only about visualization process, it gives you an insight into wide array of things. And as a data fam co-lead, I would tell you that having one of these community projects is so helpful, because my way of learning is by creating stuff. I can look at the videos and follow step by step, but if I don't create it on my personal projects, I sometimes miss out. So that is the way I learn. So don't feel free to tap into all the wide array of data farm resources that are available. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. I've got a few questions. I've been trying to keep track of what's going on. First, it's not really a question, but Philippe mentioned it, and I wanted to mention it as well, and that's your use of story points. You don't see it very often. I think I've used them a handful of times myself. Is it something you use very often, or did you think I'll try it this time?
Great questions. I utilize, so if you go to my Sherlock Holmes viz, I use the buttons, but I wanted to explore. As I said, I learned Tableau by exploring the features that are available. So that is when I was like, oh, you know what? I want to see how the story build works and what are the characteristics that I can utilize. And this was my first time creating a story point, and I'm absolutely in love with how easily it decimates information. Yeah.
It works really well with the way you've done it on the color scheme, because often it's the formatting of it can put people off, but you've just sort of shown that it does work. So what have we got? Another question from Shruti. Do you already know how your visual would look before development, or do you try things to see what looks best?
Thank you for the question, Shruti. And I am sort of a person who has to put it onto the screen on Tableau itself. So I tend to play around on the Tableau once I have gotten my data. So I am visualizing it while I'm creating it. I would love to get to the process where I can build the wireframes of these visualizations and create after it. And this visualization, especially because it was under time crunch, I had to just start creating it. But that might not be the case for the personal projects. You might want to create your wireframe and based off of that, go data searching and then build. So that is what I said. There is no standardized design technique. It just changes from viz to viz.
Brilliant. And one more, and I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, so I apologize. Ojoswi. In a real world scenario with incrementally data coming in, how scalable and practical are these bespoke chart types?
Yes, great question. I have a different stand on bespoke chart types. They are really good for your personal projects. I have not gotten an opportunity to use them at work. I've probably thrown a Sankey out there from time to time in my visualizations at work, but I don't think I've ever used a steam graph. And yeah, the data needs and the data calculations don't sit with what works in the real world or in the work. But they're a great way to explore your data or express your data sets. So let me know if anybody is using bespoke charts at their workspace and have been successful doing it.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Yeah, and being successful. It's that repeatableness as well. It's like doing one-offs. You can get away with it, but that repeatable thing, yeah, it's very tricky. Brilliant. I think that's all the questions. So thank you very much. It's a lot of comments on the chat, so I think people have enjoyed it.
Thank you, Ant. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I'm really excited. Do feel free to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you all. Bye.
Great. Right, I shall pass over to Priyanka.
Thanks, Ant, and lovely presentation, Preethi. So next up, we have Varun. And Varun is, I'm sure everyone knows him with his amazing work. He's a data analyst and a Tableau expert at Emirates NBD. He has 5 wins of the days, which is amazing. And it's really hard to pick which one should he present, but we settled on something. He was on a Tableau next list that Adam Miko runs. And now he's a Tableau public ambassador. So no surprise there. He also has been an Iron Fist qualified 2023 for APAC region. So that has been great. And I can see he's a math nerd because I've seen his work and his visualization, which requires a lot of maths. So without any further ado, Varun, take it away. Excited to hear you.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining me from. I hope you can see my screen and the Tableau workbook that I have open. So, and thank you, Priyanka, for that great introduction. She pretty much covered all of it. One little bit tweak I would like to make is that I am just not a math nerd. I'm a math grad. So officially, unofficially, I love math. And yeah, I joined DataFam 2 years back with Tableau Conference 21. It's almost time for DC 24. So really excited about that. It's been a short but very, very eventful journey, and really excited to talk about my viz with all of you. And yeah, let's not waste the time and start talking about the viz. So so the name of the viz is Rediscovering the Love for Books. I prepared this for Iron Quest, which is, I'm sure a lot of people know, is a community project run by Sarah Bartlett, mimicking the Iron Viz process. And for the topic advanced chart types, very fitting for my visual, I prepared this viz, but it has been a struggle to complete it. And you know what, for that, I'll just take you to my Tableau public profile and you'll get to know what I'm talking about. So the first time that I started thinking about Viz is, first of all, I have been reading regularly for almost 3 years now. And a year ago, I was thinking about, using that data, combining reading and Vizzing, my two biggest passions, into one jumble of a Viz. And if I go into my graveyard of Viz, please don't look at anything that I would not want you guys to. But yeah, this is the first publish I made, obviously hidden, and you can see it's like almost a year ago. It has been crazy from Feb to my last publish, which is in July. It's been 6 months, and finally, with the coming with Sarah launching Iron Quest, I was finally able to okay, I need to finish it, and I finally able to finish the Viz. Let me take you to the Viz itself, and I'll just talk a little bit about it because there's a lot to talk about here. I'm going to delve into each and every bits and pieces of it, but there's a lot of commentary and things like that, and I would really urge you to go to my profile, Tableau public profile, and just try to have fun with it. So yeah, so the viz is broadly divided into two parts. There is a timeline feature on the right, which talks about my pace of reading and what genres and what books I'm reading at a particular time. On the left is some of the supporting charts that talks about one specific aspect of my reading journey, whether it be which year the books are published, either they are old or new, what I am rating the books versus what the general public is rating the books, and what genres and what series these books are part of. So these two are meant to complement each other with this is one of my favorite uh, feature about the Viz. I like to call it navigation trail because I haven't seen a lot of people doing that. So I thought I'll just name it. This gives you a way to actually interact with the story, and this navigation trail help you get sense of these vizes, give you sense of these charts, and give you little bit nuggets of commentary and try to tell that whole story. As you can see, as I click next, it just starts talking about how I started to go into Greek mythology, like 4 or 5 books I read in like a month. It has been crazy, and that's where I really started to getting into books, started to read about classics, and how earlier I used to read in 2021, 2022, you can see a lot of pre-2000 books, which is like before I was even born, I was reading those books. But in 2023, most of them have been newer books. And yeah, there has been a lot of commentary how when I was vacation, I didn't get to read at all, which makes sense. And yeah, there's loads of information that I'm not going to be delving into. This is one of my favorite parts of the Wiz as well, this fact bubble chart. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper on this, but just to give a shout out on CJ Mays. I'm sure everybody knows him. He just does great work with programming and Tableau and making bespoke visualizations. Everybody check his blog out. Yeah, so moving on. Inspiration. So everybody knows that inspiration is one of the major inputs that goes into a Viz that helps you create good Vizes, good charts, design anything. And these three, so usually how it goes with me is that I have my eyes and ears open for any kind of Viz that's any kind of design inspiration, Viz inspiration, any kind of work people have been doing in the data fam and things like that. But I have been able to pick three of these. So first one is, of course, everybody know him, Brian Moore's packed bubble chart. This is like way more complex than I have done it. He is, I mean, he's just doing a lot of wizarding stuff here. And but the main idea is that packed bubble chart, how he has grouped different characters of Simpsons into families and to show that hierarchical relationship here. And that's one of my inspiration into building one of these charts. And again, just head over to his profile. I don't think I even have to uh, talk about Brian because everybody knows him already. Then this Viz, which lives in my mind rent free, is by CJ Mays. And I would say that this inspired my design philosophy. And I have been like, I love this Viz. It has that playful quality with, let me just let it load for a bit and then I'll talk about it. Yeah. So it has that colorful harmony. Everything just fits together. There's lots of information, but it still looks very clean, right? And again, the handwriting kind of a font that I also use in my Viz, used in this Viz, that kind of bring that playful quality and to say that, okay, this is not really, very serious. It's very playful. It's very casual and just sets the mood for the Viz, for the users to, delve into the Viz. As one of my favorite Vizes of all times. And finally, this is 2023 Iron List submission by Quinn Surface. Again, I actually didn't knew about him before this Viz, but after seeing this Viz, how he like, if I talk you through it, it talks about the dark side of the Tour de France and how there's different doping allegations and how that fits into the story. But there's like two parts in this Viz, and each of them complement each other. And that's what I try to do with my timeline piece and the other charts, and to tell the story which is very coherent but still kind of divided into two pieces. So this is very, very, very awesomely done chart. And he has a lot of other stuff. I would say that, yeah, do go into his profile and look into his stuff. This awesome designer. So that's where that's just pretty much about inspiration. I think Preethi also mentioned that everyone in Data Fam has been doing a lot of stuff. They have done a lot of things. They are doing consistently. You can see things on Twitter, LinkedIn, Tableau Public. So just go on there, just look at other people's stuff, and that's what it takes. If you the more visits you look, the more good thing you lay your eyes on, the more better visits you can draw. All right, so that's a little chunk of advice from me here, and now I'll just dig into the good stuff. So we'll start with data, and then we'll go into different aspects, different little nuggets in the Viz, and talk about why I build them, how I build them, and things like that. So data. So this is a quantified self Viz. Quantified self means something about me that I have painstakingly, because yeah, that's it was painstakingly collated all the data and created enough of it to make a Viz out of it. So one thing was that I store all my reading information on Goodreads.com. So it's a very popular site. You can log which books you read, which books you have read, how much rating you want to give them, other things like that. So I have like almost 50 something Vizes in here. And yeah, I have been very methodically logging these on here, which is kind of surprise if you know me. And one of the interesting things here is you can export the library. So it exports all this data and some metadata about these books, like how many people are liking it, who is the author, what's the genre, and things like that. And it provides you a very good starting point if you want to visualize your reading history. And that's where I started. Then there's some manual additions like fixing the reading timeline. There's some error on how Goodreads log the reading time and things like that. So I had to fix those things manually. I have to add my ratings, locations of the books, which eventually I did not need in this quiz, but that I did. And there's a calendar table. So this is a concept of date scaffolding that I would be talking about a little bit in later when I talk about the timeline chart, but this calendar table I have to build together, put together for this quiz. And finally, a little bit of programming, not a lot, just a little bit, but yeah, that I had to do that. I can show you a snapshot of how this data look like. So it's very short. It's 48 books now. I think I can add a few more if I want to. Ever since July, I've read like 5 or 7 more books. So yeah, it's very simple data set. It's the title of the book. It's titled in a more cleaned way. Who wrote that book? What's the genre? This genre is given by me because your books can have like multiple genres, everyone know. Which series it's part of, what's my rating, what's the average rating, number of pages, and other things like that. And most importantly, start and end date of the quiz. So that's when I started reading it, that's when I ended reading that book. Then there's a calendar table, which is, surprise, surprise, a calendar. So just a date from I think all the dates in 2021 to 2023. That's pretty much it. And packed bubble chart. It looks a little scary because it's an output of the little bit of Python code that I basically stole. So yeah, we're going to talk about that, but this helps us making that packed bubble chart in Tableau. And finally, a little bit of densification. I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar about it. Densification we used to create any kind of curve in Tableau. So I don't know why I have this column actually, but only the first column is necessary, and it's just 100 rows from 1 to 100. So that's pretty much the data in this. And for different kind of charts, I had to do a little bit of joins and stuff, but we'll talk about them as we go through each of the charts. I'm sorry. And yeah, let's get into the good stuff. First thing I'm going to talk about is packed bubble chart. So this is one of my starting point of this whole Viz actually. So packed bubble chart is one of the charts that I always wanted to draw because it is a very natural way to show a hierarchical structure. So you can have an outer circle, then there's an inner circle, there's another inner circle inside that. So it's very natural way to show hierarchy. It's very easy to interpret. Also, it's damn difficult to make because there's some kind of an optimization going. You have to put the circles and their sizes in a way that it is packed, right? So you can't do that in Tableau. You have to have an external component bring in either from it's basically a little bit of coding involved, right? So that's I think Preethi asked me to, before I delve into the actual charts, Preethi asked me to give a disclaimer that yeah, I am a math crack and I love programming. So please don't be scared, right? I'll try to make it as easy as possible to follow. But yeah, of course, questions, if any, please feel free to ask, right? So yeah, so this involves a lot of data preparation and programming. And yeah, I'll try to talk about it. And what this chart is doing in my Viz is it connects genres with series and with books. So the size of the bubble is the number of pages of that particular book. So you can see this book, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, is in the genre of fantasy, and it's 500 something pages long. It's part of a series which is called the Poppy War series, and this whole series is part of the fantasy genre. It follows in each of those 10 genres, and there's a helpful little how to read information here in the tooltip that if you hover over this bulb icon, you can see. All right, so yeah, it's a very good way to display this information because either you can do a bar chart or something like that, or you can create something bespoke like this. How to draw this chart. So all courtesy goes to CJ Mays. There is a very helpful blog he has written where he uses another person's code to and interpreted it for Tableau and giving it a lot of information how to build it exactly in Tableau. So my chart looks a little different than this because it's essentially a lot of packed bubble charts. So this is one packed bubble chart, this is one packed bubble chart, this is one packed bubble chart, and these are all in turn packed. So I had to change that code in a little bit and add a little bit of my flair in it to actually get all those points and the sizes of the circle. I'll give you a glimpse of my code. Please don't be scared of the code because, as I said, it's a lot of just copy pasting from CJ's code, right? So what I do is I input the data, which is in a JSON format here, and I run this little bit of code. What this code does is it creates a packed bubble chart for each of the genres. So this is the fantasy genre, this is a science fiction genre, and so on and so forth. This is mythological fiction. Some genres have only one book, so it's just like one circle. And what this outputs is the genre, the name of the book, the x coordinate of where that circle goes, the y coordinate of where that circle goes, and the size of the radius. That's pretty much it. And when we bring this into Tableau, I think all of you know that Tableau doesn't understand radius of a circle. So you can't just go and say, okay, make this circle. You can put the circle at the right place, x and y coordinates on columns and rows, but you can't tell it, okay, the radius is this big, draw it this way. So we have to do a little bit of densification. I hope I can show you this. Yeah, so this is my books data set, which I showed you already in the scaffolding, which is just 1 to 100 path, 1 to 100 single column data set that helps densify the data to build that circle. So yeah, so we use this densification to actually plot each and every outer point of these circles, and it's built up of 6 layers. I'll take you through the outermost to innermost. The outermost here are the genres, right? Then we go a little bit inside, and this it talks about the series, which series are I have read inside these genres. One fun fact about it is when I was finishing the books, around only that time, Tableau has released this dotted line function, and I just pounced upon it. Okay, I need this in my chart, need this in my viz, and here it is. And finally, there's there's all the books in those packed bubble charts. And one fun fact about this, how did I arrange all of these together? So I just put those in manually. So I mean, this whole circle is at 0, 0, and I had to fiddle around with these x and y coordinates. I can move anybody around if you want to see. So the fiction circle will go here, like from this point to this point. So I had to really this took like a couple of hours to actually just put everything in a way that it looks packed, but it's just manual dirty work. And yeah, behind every interesting visual is a lot of dirty work, and this is like the living example of it. So every genre is placed very painstakingly on very specific points in this canvas. All right, so that's how I draw this packed bubble chart. I'm sure you'll have more questions, but yeah, put them in the chat. We'll pick them up at the end, I guess. Second, I want to talk about the chord diagram. So chord diagram is, again, it's not as involved as packed bubble diagram, but it's a little bit interesting to draw and looks very interesting to read. So going back to the Viz, what does this talks about? So this talks about, I always wonder, I wanted to tell this little bit of story of when I was actually reading the book and what time period the book was. Let me just, yeah, okay. What time period the book actually was, and try to see if there's any pattern in there and any trends that I'm following. So it turns out there was. These red or orange circles are when I'm reading that book, and these outer circles are when the book was published. So in 2021, you can see I read one book which was very old, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, really great book. And in 2022, again, I read one book which was very old, again, a Russian classic, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. And of course, in 2021, there's loads of books that are not as old, but still old. from 90s, before 90s, and in 2023 I kind of switched to more newer books, and I think this trend has been going in 2024 as well. So this kind of chord chart is, I think, it's very again insightful way to show this information. Again, there's this vision tooltip, one of my favorite features of Tableau, to just give that little bit extra information. If you get aggregate information which is shown here but in a very scattered kind of a way, you can just see it here. All right, so yeah, that's my intent of using this chart. How did I build this? Again, this is courtesy of Brian Moore. I'm sure behind every complex chart there is Brian Moore's blog, or Kevin Furley's blog. This time it was Brian Moore's, and it's a very awesome blog. It tells you that you can really understand how Bezier works and things like that. You don't need to, but you can if you want to. Or either if you don't want to, you can just follow the process. Just copy paste this formula, which pretty much I did here. Chords, yeah. So again, before going into the formulas, I won't really expand on that because it's just formulas, which I also don't understand, to be very honest. Since we are drawing curves, there's again the same piece. There's scaffolding. I guess it used the same data set as the packed bubble chart. There is the data densification here, and that is being used to draw the curve. Yeah, so again, this is made up of 3 and 4 layers. One layer is these Bezier curves, and one layer is this circular arc. One layer is these circles, excuse me, and 1 and 2 layers are these circles here. So if you go look at this is Bezier point, it's made up of, it's a map layer calculation. This page is full of map layer. It takes the y coordinate and x coordinate. Each one of them is this complex looking query that, yeah, I don't understand it. It's just my version of Brian's. You'll find the same exact formula on his blog. So I guess the lesson is you don't really have to understand all of this stuff to build interesting chart. Someone in DataFam has done the heavy lifting for you, and just have to plug and play. Right. So yeah, that's the story behind this chart. Finally, the timeline. That's kind of my spine of the Viz, very literally and very figuratively, because it runs from top to bottom and it tells the whole timeline. I hope to tell when I'm reading some kind of books and how fast I'm reading those books kind of tells a little bit about my mental state, my state in life at that point. And maybe that was not highlighted as I finished the Viz, but that was definitely the intent at the beginning. So timeline, unironically, it was the hardest to come up with, even though it's just an area chart. It tells an approximate number of pages I read every day. So I would take you to the Viz and hover over this little tooltip here. I hope you can read this, but I'm not logging how many pages I am reading every day. I'm just logging when I start the book, when I end the book, and I do an approximate pages per day kind of a calculation, which is total pages in the book divided by total days that it takes to read the book. It's 500 pages, 5 days, like 100 pages a book. That's what the height of these this area chart is. Right. So as you can see here on the right, there goes which book exactly I'm reading, and obviously colored by genre. So you can see when there's a peak here, it usually is associated with a fantasy book. I can literally inhale those books. Go here again. There are some spikes, and again there is a fantasy book here. Interestingly, by the same author as here. And yeah, some books like the classics here, it takes a little bit of time to go through these, like 28 pages a book, which is still a lot because there's very antiquated language and complex vocabulary. I'm not a native English speaker, so it takes a little bit of time to go through these. But yeah, that's the story. Then again, there's this annotation piece here that gives you that little bit of extra context about the different phases or different times of this whole timeline. Yeah, so this is the timeline piece. One interesting thing about this is that it gives you a data point for each date from like May 2021 to May 2023. If I'm not wrong. Yeah. But my data is, as you remember, it looks like not this, but this, right? It tells there's only 50 rows, 48 rows, and it just tells you when it starts and when it ends. So what you use here to build this kind of a chart is a concept called date scaffolding. It's a scary name, but it's very similar to densification. What you do is you basically bring all those dates in from somewhere, and that's where the calendar table comes in. So what's the difference between a normal densification and a date scaffolding is that in date scaffolding, calendar comes first. In normal densification, the scaffolding table or a densification table comes at the second. It would come here, for example. But here you have a calendar table. You just join this with the books table, and it's a cross join. So like very standard way of doing it, just calculation called the number one, and it just duplicates the data all the way through. And then you can plot each and every point. It's a very simple calculation. If you want to look at the calculation of it, the number of pages, it just tells you if the date of the calendar field falls between start date and end date, then you do this number of calculations, and the approximate number of pages that we discussed before. It's a very simple calculation, but it took a lot of tries to get right. And along with that, the genre chart, this is actually the simplest of it. It's just a line from the start point to the end point. That's pretty much it. And of course, divided by genre. Yeah, so this was the timeline piece. It was it. If I remember correctly, this was one of the earliest things that I tried to do with this data. And only at this point, I was like, okay, this makes sense and this is doable and tells the story. And I landed on this. Finally, there's this little chart that we missed, is this ratings chart. And I mean, you can see here that I like ran out of gas here. I was like, okay, it's been a long journey. I need to finish this. So I will build anything that conveys the story. That says nothing complex or complicated anyhow. So it's simple jitter plot which compares my rating of the Viz with what other people have rated on an average. This is Goodreads average rating. So one book here in particular, it's called Confederacy of Dunces. Very classic humor book, average rated 3.88, but I just didn't like it. So it's 2 for me. Otherwise, it's very similar to the general public that have rated the books. And yeah, that's a rating chart. Finally, and I think I probably have to rush through this. Not sure, but yeah, finally the navigation trail. This is the best part of my Viz, and it just brings those new features in Tableau along with Figma images together in a way that just provides you that great user experience. And this, I guess, I would say it's developed by me. I haven't seen anyone else do it. Maybe I am not looking enough, right? But yeah, so if I take you to the Viz here and expand everything. Oh my God, where am I? Yeah. So here you can see all of the different callouts open. Now you can see that the Viz looks a little bit cluttered. There's lots of pop-ups. There's the spotlight on the Vizes gets a little bit dimmed, so it's not that great of a look. So initially, what I had was this without the navigation trail. So it looked a little bit cluttered, and that's where the necessity but invention. So I thought like I had to have a better way to tell the story without making it cluttered. So yeah, that's where I came up with navigation trail. One good thing about this is that it caters to both kind of audience. One kind of a casual audience that just wants to look at pretty things and was like, okay, this looks interesting. This is good. This is good. They just kind of gets the visual. They're like, okay, yeah, cool. It looks good. Right. So that's like the casual viewer who is not put off by bombardment of information. They're just getting what they need. And for the more interested user who want to do a deep dive, there's just loads of information they can look at. And You can go back and forth. I can play with it all day, to be honest. Back and forth. If you wanna restart, it's like a game. So it just works very nice. It gives you that very natural user experience, and it takes you through the whole, because this viz is big, and there's like two halves of it, so it can be complicated for anyone to go through in a way that I intend to. Right. So if you can't do that with the layout, you just tell the user, okay, go there, go there, go there. And that's where I did this. Yeah, so it uses a lot of DCV and a lot of images that I built in Figma. I will show you those images later on if I have time in my hand. And yeah, how do I do it? Good question. So what this uses is a small data set, which is, I promise it's very small. Let me just, if I can open it up. Yeah, this is a data set called nav, very succinctly, and view data. There's just 3 rows, and this is the only column in the data. It's 1, -1, 0. So how this works is, there's 1, -1. It works on the concept of navigation states, I like to call them. So states are which state you are in the story, and these 3 icons actually take you one step further, one state behind, and to the home. Right? That's where 1, -1, and 0 goes. What happens is when you click on any of these images, it would trigger an action that changes the state of your viz, of your story. So currently the state is 0 when there's nothing open. When you click on this, the action would add the state to 1 if you click on the red button here. And for one state, there is this little image that is here, this one, which is just annotation. I can remove it and bring it back. Yeah, so this annotation has a DZV, which tells you if the navigation state is 2, then show it. And if it's not 2, then hide it. Or if it's before 2, then hide it. So again, if I click on this, the navigation state using the parameter action would go 1 point ahead. And similarly with back, it goes 1 point before. If I go ahead, then this little image that is another DZV, which says if the navigation state is 3, then show this. And if it's before 3, then don't show it. So it's just a little bit of a soup of DZV and images that enables this thing. If you really want to learn how I did it in detail, I would say just open the workbook on Tableau Public. All of my workbooks are downloadable. Open it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, any way you can get a hold of it. I would love to help you if you want to understand how it works. But yeah, I just love this feature. And yeah, it is just anything that provides that great user experience within the limitations of Tableau. If you are able to do it, that's the holy grail for me. Not to toot my own horn that much, but yeah, that's the navigation trail. And I hope I was able to explain it in a way that you guys can understand and just can, I mean, look at me. I can just play with it all day. I'm sure I've said it before, but yeah. Finally, this is one thing that I like to add ending as I end my presentation here. And Preethi has raised a lot of good points about designing in general, how to use text hierarchy, how to use colors and stuff like that. I have a lot of people ask, not a lot of, but some people who have met me from data have asked me, how do I design stuff? How do I design this viz? If you are interesting to know, there's just a little bit of nuggets that I dropped while I was talking about these charts, but a couple of points that I prepared at the end just to give a little bit of advice or just to get you started is these things. First of all, I built everything in Figma, everything as in every chart. If I can show you the Figma file, this is my Figma file. It actually has the backgrounds and stuff, design stuff for 2 vizes. But yeah, this is how it looks like. It started with this. Started as in after 4 months of deliberation, I reached this point to actually tell the whole story. It looks a little bit uglier. So that's why I shifted to this. Now, if I were to show you, I think it's, yeah, this one. back the commentary piece. If I remove this, that's the whole background of my viz. And I prepared the commentary in different groups so that it's easier to export them at the end. The first group just contains this thing. Second group, the second set of annotations, and 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Yeah, then there's a little bit of elements like this. I initially thought I'd do something like this. Let me put a white border around it so it's easier to see. Yeah, so it's supposed to look like this, but I eventually went with a brush stroke. Looks cool. Then the tooltip pop-ups, had to design them all in here in this point. Then these little design elements that enables the DZV. Also, which something that you might have missed is that these little bookmarks here for the callouts, actually, the color of these actually signify what genre I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about classics, which is the red color here, it is a red bookmark. When I'm talking about a historical fiction book, it's a purple bookmark. So these little nuggets, very little things that I don't think anybody other than me noticed, but that it just brings everything together, and I just love doing this. And yeah, that's I think all. Now you can see this. This is something else I did with this data and this is that I would just touch upon for a minute. But yeah, this is how my Figma file looks. It's very, I mean, there's no structure to be honest here. I just do things ad hoc, and that's kind of shows in my viz and I guess my presentation too. Yeah, talking about the design thing, Figma is just a tool. Remember, guys, I think I have seen a lot of people doing great stuff with PowerPoint. I just can't handle that tool. I just don't know how to do anything in that, but people make vizzes, people use that like Illustrator, and it's just crazy. So yeah, it's a tool. It should not hamper you. Do things with whatever tool you like to do. For mantras, I would say, is keep your eyes open. So that's the thing about inspiration, because the quality of what you're consuming is directly proportional or in some way proportional to the quality that you're putting out there. So if you have your eyes stuck on like Tableau Public, on Pinterest, like I do, and just looking for good vizzes out there, looking for everything that's related to design, more good things that comes inside you. You're like a chat GPT model, as the answer would be as good as the prompt. So you have to make that prompt strong. So you have to go see different stuff, right? That's how you create good things. Don't overdo. Less is better, right? I think Preethi also touched upon this, that you don't have to go crazy on things, right? This viz looks a little bit crazy. I agree, but I did remove all those call outs because less is better. You don't have to show everything to everyone, right? So yeah, don't overdo things. Start from little things. And yeah, third point, it's the little things that makes all the difference. So little things like formatted tooltips, right? Things like pop-up icons about how to read and helping the user have a more enriched user experience, following a text hierarchy, highlighting the right stuff that you want users' eyes to be. And yeah, Viz and tooltips, a great example of little things that just pops. This is how good this is. And not just this particular Viz, but Viz and tooltip in general. It just gives you that extra information and it just slides in. Right? It's not obstructive. You can remove this and it's gone, but it just gives you that right amount of information that you didn't know you needed, but now you have it and you're happy with that. Finally, add a personal touch. Anything works. I guess you don't have to really focus too much on this because this is something that develops. One of the great examples is Saverio. I'm sure a lot of people, you guys already know him. His viz is like, you can tell it's his viz before his name comes up, right? That's the very distinctive design philosophy that he has and design patterns that he has, and it shows in his viz, right? So do a lot of stuff, you'll develop your personal touch, and as soon as like you have something, okay, this looks like a Varun viz, or this looks like your viz, this looks like this guy's viz, that shows. And it doesn't have to be too much, or it doesn't have to be like you have a fixed palette you're working with. It could be little thing like how you format tooltips, right? How you give bespoke titles to your charts and things like that. So yeah, they're not very actionable as in things like choose less colors, choose text hierarchy. This is very important. Those are, I would say, the fundamentals of design that Preethi covered in a much more cohesive way. This is more like general principles that you can follow to make those design pop up. Right, and I think I'm at the end of this. I hope I'm not over time. So yeah, this is the end. I would just say take another minute and say that I've created an Iron Viz edition of this this data and this Viz as well that I submitted for the global qualifiers for Iron Viz. And if you have time, go through it. It looks similar, but there's like some other interesting elements, some different charts. And yeah, this is the end of the Viz. Any questions, comments, anything, please feel free to raise them right now. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, Eric, we are almost at time. I'll just take 1 minute. I think someone had a question on how long it took for the whole process from data to the final Viz, Varun.
Yeah. So I mean, if you consider everything, it took 5 months. But I'm not like working on the Viz for those 5 months, right? There was gathering inspiration and things like that. But I would say if having collected the data to, I mean, when I have like what I really wanted to build to actually building it, I would say a month on and off, right? Along with the work responsibilities and everything that goes on with the life. It took about a month to build this. But yeah, the thinking and everything that has been going forever.
Yeah, I can understand that. And can you tell us what font you used in the Figma? I think someone wanted to know. It was very playful.
Oh yeah,
Maybe you
I
can put
guess
that on
there's like 3-4 fonts here. I have to look into my Figma file if I'm
the OS. Yeah, you
honest.
can check that out later.
It's
While you do that, Varun, I just want to let you know we loved your one-liners. I have 5 of them written down. So yeah, that is how I'm gonna tweet going forward. If there's a complex chart, there's Brian, and behind every Viz, there's dirty work. Amazing one-liners.
yeah. So ironically, the font is called Poor Story. I didn't know that until now. Yeah, so that's another
Okay,
Easter egg, right? Called Poor Story.
that is great.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah.
Let's do some swag. We got about 5 minutes to wrap this up. So hopefully we've still got some people here who want some free stuff. Let me share my screen again. All right, so I've loaded it up with everybody who has attended, and let's spend. Again, we're going to give away 2 power bricks, unless you want something else. So it looks like Rashab Bahara. I butchered that, but if you will email tableaupublictug@gmail.com, I will send you a form to fill out for the swag drawing. All right, we've got one more. Let's go to the next one. And we've got David Osinde. All right, congratulations, David. Like I said, we're giving away this power brick. If there's something else on the Tableau store you'd rather have, you can go to it. And when you reply to that email on the form I send you, there's these SKU codes. If you'll send me that, I can get you whatever you want. That's less than $50. So that's why I picked the power brick, because it's $50 and the max that we can get for a Tableau users group. So next month, we've got Karen Marty is going to join us and tell us all about the Data Plus movies so far. She's the sort of manager for that project and will give us an update. Lindsay Betzenthal will join us and show us her viz on Jim Carey from Her Data Plus Movies effort. And then Jaroslav Tomkala will join us and do his Star Wars versus Star Trek viz. So please join us and see how those vizzes were created. And finally, I would love to see a head-to-head matchup, maybe between Lindsay and a couple of our hosts on this new Tableau public profile stats and see who's got some great stats. And then finally, Tableau Public Conference, again, is in San Diego, 4/29 through 5/1. We hope to see you there. I'm lobbying them for doing a Tableau Public meetup in the community area. So hopefully we will all see each other in person in San Diego. So if you want your own viz of the day, build a viz that is timely and topical, highlights new features, spotlights the diverse Tableau community, includes a novel chart type or Tableau trick, communicates a key insider story, and of course, is visually stunning. We saw plenty of that today. So thank you for your time, and we appreciate everybody being here.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
All right.